Okay, there we go. No, my name is Christopher, and I'm located in Denmark, and I'm partner in a company called Entrepreneurial, where we work with entrepreneurship and how to make better entrepreneurs all over the world. We've been providing incubators and accelerators and universities and investment foundations and a lot of different players in the entrepreneurial ecosystems in many countries with the tools and the methodology for doing more efficient process when doing entrepreneurship. And we, as today, we have a data warehouse with more than 25,000 cases, startup cases, ideas, and all levels of entrepreneurs starting a company. Some of them only have a vague idea, and some of them heavily founded or funded scale ups and startups. But we think it's very interesting to not kind of look only at the ones that have scalability perspectives, but also just look at people. What actually drives entrepreneurs and what differs when it comes to creative entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs and blockchain entrepreneurs and so on. We've been doing quite a lot of research based on those 25,000 cases, and some of that we of course bring into the tools and so that we develop. To be straightforward with you, this community that is being built here is brand new for us, and I don't know about the rest of you that are here, but for me it's mind-blowing. I find it really interesting in so many matters that the ability to mobilize and do development of both ideas and projects and so on in this way is really interesting. And of course also when it comes to entrepreneurship and tools and methods, what relates to that. Yeah. Hi, Chris.
It's not just Ethiopia where the internet craps out.
Is it the Brexit effect or what is it?
Yeah.
I think so. It's like GCHQ tightening my my bandwidth, because what we're doing is quite revolutionary and counterculture, maybe. I don't want to interrupt you, Chris, if you were introducing yourself.
No, but actually the timing was perfect. I just finished now, and I see that Len has raised his hand.
Yeah, Christopher, are you familiar with a Danish originated system called Growth Wheel?
Yeah, know it quite well.
Okay. I've actually been attempting to, I've been lurking, but attempting to introduce it to Project Catalyst. I went through their certification process. I worked with one proposal as a mentor and used that. I think that there's a lot that can be used in Growth Wheel, and I'm quite interested to work with proposers on that.
Cool. And yeah, they have a really extensive database of tools and models and so on, which is really interesting, definitely.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I can pick up. You guys have obviously got to understand that Chris is going to be working with some of the funded project teams under Catalyst. We are kicking off this incubator partnership that's going to see a whole bunch of funded teams go through this boot camp, and it's really for you guys to take advantage of while it's available. That's what I would say. And then with the growth wheel, I think once some of the methods and the tooling around the Entrepreneurial program and how it sort of integrates with what we're doing becomes better well known, I'd be really keen to see what you think and how it sort of compares really from an outsider's perspective. I thought I could sort of top and tail this. Oh, go on, Len, please respond.
No, actually, what I was, my initial interest was to offer Growth Wheel to proposers. My my observation or conclusions about the proposals since Fund 3 is that I would say 95% or 90% have no business planning in their proposals. And whilst there are some proposals that are not commercial, that they're either helpful or they're just to contribute a new tool to the community, I would say many or most of them they look like they want to be a commercial project. And the amount of money that they can expect to raise through Catalyst is nothing compared to what they will need to make something successful. And I mean, I think that's evidenced by John's point about helping with Series A and seed rounds and things like that. And in order for any serious funder, and Christopher, I'm sure that you know this, they want to see the basics of business planning. The idea, never mind the idea. They want to see the team and they want to see the basics of business planning, whether it's how granular it is at the stage of the project. And Growth Wheel, I feel, is that actually why I got interested in Growth Wheel is from Catalyst, is I think that that kind of tool can help proposers to put a high level or a detailed level of business planning together. And that would help whether it helps their voting chances, it certainly would help them to be successful.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And there's so many readily available tools and models that are out there, right, just to get started. And yeah, I'm certainly keen to see the community adopt a number of different approaches to help, improve the quality of and clarity, really, more not quality, the clarity of people's ideas. And that was always the intention with this challenge. I think, the starting point for this for me was that I've just seen so many entrepreneurs that have absolutely no lack of vision, like hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs in my time. But a lot of people really struggle to put structure and clarity around their ideas. And that because it's a dark art and it's a skill, it's often a very different skill set to that of what maybe the entrepreneur or the engineer or the early stage entrepreneur, that person that's not so seasoned, might struggle with. Like, how is it that you know what an investor wants to really understand? How is it do you know what a customer wants to understand? They're very different ideas, right?
What I find attractive at Growth Wheel, and Christopher, you said you're familiar with it, and there's other tools as well. But what I find attractive is it's pretty simple to produce sophisticated planning, meaning it's a highly connected database that based on some inputs, and the inputs are like salaries or whatever. It's not just numbers. Activities, what needs to be done in the next 30, 60, 90 days. And so it's pretty easy to generate a rather sophisticated business planning document. Now, like anything else, if you just produce it and don't use it, it's going to be not very helpful. But that kind of a system, like I said, is very simple for filling it out and generating like milestones and what to do. And as you said, Chris, I think it helps to impose structure on the proposers if they understand that structure is beneficial to them. Yeah,
quite. And I mean, it's about systematizing things. I mean, Chris has got some really strong views here, I think, and I'm really keen to get him to air some ideas around, your sort of perspective on what entrepreneurship really constitutes, right? We've spent a lot of time talking together about the buckets of entrepreneurship and being a modular process, right? I want to come to you, and I think it'd be great to hear you sort of riff for a while. First of all, I just want to answer have Felix. Yeah, I'll ask a question, and then Phil, and then I'll hand over to you, Kriss, just to go for some.
Because Kriss and Kriss, I have one question, especially in regard to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is beautiful and all, but in our case, we speak specifically about blockchain entrepreneurship. I would be curious to see what for expertise you bring here, because when you say, okay, entrepreneurship, for example, you are paid in euro or in dollar, this is beautiful. But what happens with enterprise joining in and it's paid in ADA? Because, for example, this is a problem. When we say, for example, for our case, okay, we make an invoice, let's say, for example, for whatnot in ADA.
Mm-hmm.
We come to a totally new structure, totally new environment, very wavering price. How can you guarantee a sustainable, let's say, base for an enterprise on the cryptocurrency? Because after all, we have to fit somehow to the system around us, which means the governance, which still works in fiat. And for me, it would be quite interesting just to know what for blockchain entrepreneur experience or skill set you could offer to the community also.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, just to pick up on that very quickly, because I don't want to, I think we should all kind of caveat some of these conversations, right? Like there are literally next to no blockchain focused accelerators and incubators like that are actually running dedicated blockchain programs. You know, there are a few, there are exceptions to that for sure. And there is definitely some blockchain entrepreneurship expertise that can be drawn upon around the various different communities. But you know, let's be really pragmatic about it. That's what essentially we are here, right? We're the blockchain entrepreneurs. We just may not have built projects on platforms that have been well established for the last few years. So, you know, I think not to, because I don't want to downplay what Kriss and Entrepreneurial and like actually the sort of spirit of this challenge is all about. But you know, I don't think we're explicitly coming at this through the lens of what blockchain experience can we offer to the community, but more, you know, what particularly for this challenge around Fund 6, what is it that's kind of necessary and what needs to be considered for blockchain entrepreneurs to really thrive? I'd flip the question on the head, right? Phil, I want to come to you, and then perhaps Kriss can sort of pick up, talk a little bit more philosophically or otherwise.
Thank you, Kriss. I just want to voice Tommy's question. He has a small daughter and she's sleeping. So is it correct to assume that we are talking about entrepreneurs both within Catalyst and outside? And they're both blockchain entrepreneurs and those who've never heard about Cardano?
I think within the context of this challenge within Fund 6, you know, I don't think it's just about building technology products, right? Like it's, you can build businesses and be entrepreneurial outside of the context of building a blockchain product for the context of Catalyst for certain, right? There's community outreach centers, or proposer outreach initiatives, there's marketing initiatives. All of those are different sort of components that, you know, make up an ecosystem, of which there are entrepreneurial actors that sit within all of those. So that's why I'm keen not to get too entrenched in just this being for blockchain engineers and product people, but more sort of considerate of the holistic, the breadth of entrepreneurial activities and ventures, types of ventures that we could encounter in this ecosystem.
Yeah, and if I should follow up on that a little bit, I don't really see it. Maybe it's just my way of trying to make things as simple as possible, but I don't really see why not a company in the Catalyst program should not be able to both be paid in cryptocurrencies and in dollars and in pounds and whatever. That's not really the focus for us. The focus for us is to make services, product, businesses, whatsoever, that are sustainable, and a little bit back to what you mentioned, Len, that have the basis foundation of building a business straight. And we see that going structured and methodologically to that process is very strong and very efficient. And then there are some things that you need to put on. If it's a blockchain entrepreneur, then you will need some people that have knowledge within that domain or that industry or the market that they're going to approach. And often you can't say on beforehand what would be the right mentor or the right expert and advisor and so on. And that is actually one of the things that we really hope that we can explore and exploit through this. Is okay, when we have startups, when we have new projects, new businesses starting up, how can we make sure that they get the right help? Can we mobilize that help through this community? Because that would be so very strong. And to be a little frankly, Len, if you use our method or and tools, which is very simple and not as extensive as a growth wheel, or you use the growth wheel, that's not what we see as is really breaking the ice. The ice is that you really get to work and you get to know the market, and you figure out, okay, how am I actually making a product or a service that I can get paid for? And the process there is what we find interesting. And if we can mobilize the community to help all projects or many of the projects in that process, that would be really, really nice. And of course, you need tools and platforms and so on to share the knowledge between the projects / entrepreneurs and the people that should help them.
Yeah, I think one of the, as you said, I think one of the key elements is that developers resource. I think that Project Catalyst would do well, or IOG or Cardano, whoever you want to talk to provide those development resources to the proposers on a fee basis, meaning make it circular, make the cost of X number of development hours that are needed for a project to be charged, and that IOG or Cardano Foundation actually employs and provides those resources. Because I would think that most proposers don't have an idea where they're going to get that development, that blockchain developers. And more important than money, I would think that a lot of proposers could handle self-funding, but how are they going to find the developers if it's a technically demanding solution, and if it's blockchain, it probably is. Where are they going to find those developers? I think that but through Catalyst, IOG or Cardano Foundation, if they could employ a dedicated team of 5, 6, 7, whatever, Plutus developers, if it's smart contract, or Haskell developers, whatever, and essentially make that a fundable resource for proposers, they would help proposers quite a bit.
I mean, that in an indent of itself is a proposal into Catalyst, right? Or it's even a challenge. Maybe like, you know, how do we look to pool resources to make you know, the sum of all the parts that's available for those that are putting forward great ideas. I think that's a really stellar idea, and I can see that becoming more and more relevant as time goes on. Then for sure. Nori, you recently joined us. I thought I could invite you. to the stage.
This is kind of an area I have pretty strong passion around. I think we have a lot of great ideas. We have people with all sorts of great skills coming into the space, and then our funding levels are pretty small, so it's kind of experimental. But eventually, as the funds get larger, and like was announced today, there's actual like almost like VC funding rounds and stuff. We're gonna have to level up and build out a lot of these skills. And like, even if you do have blockchain skills and the developer skills, maybe you don't know how to put together a business plan. You don't have the tools, you don't have the experience. And there are so many resources. Like the entrepreneurial space is so rich with data. Like you should be able to read books like Mastering the Rockefeller Habits and putting together a one-page business plan, or even scaling it up to the 2.0 model to like business model generation, which is super awesome. Or even like get into the lean startup stuff. Like there's thousands of books and so many resources, but not everybody has the time to read them and learn them and do them unless you've gone through that journey. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for people who have to mentor, coach, support those who need that, and teach. And I think that's a huge opportunity here, because we are pulling in people from all over that have done startups, who have this kind of experience. They know how to pitch a vision doc, how to do kind of the analysis piece to find out what the needs are in the community, or how to do the monitoring and metrics in a way that you know that it's either successful or, hey, we need to pivot and kind of change what we do in this way and be agile and do all of that. And these are all learned skills and not everybody brings to the table, but as a community, we probably have a lot of that. And being able to teach each other and mentor and do all that, I think, is a super important aspect. And I'd love to see that happen. That's why I'm here, is that's kind of a passion area of mine. I'm a software development manager, so I spend a lot of time coaching people and doing stuff. And before that, I was an entrepreneur and have several startups under my belt. So it's like the space feels like Internet 1.0, the energy around the .com boom, and everyone is excited. That kind of feeling is here again. So I've dumped my corporate job and I'm back in the entrepreneur space. I want to get really involved in.
That's awesome, Nori. And yeah, I think I echo your sentiments, right? Like we're not quite at this tipping point yet, but we are. I mean, there's a number of different tipping points I think that are to come within Catalyst. We're incredibly grassroots at the moment, and that means that there's a lot of fertile ground to be able to sow seeds. And I'm using all this foliage analogies at the moment, but it's to make the point that soon enough there's going to be some oak trees that kind of grow out of this, for sure. And even by by virtue of the sums that are involved, it's going to garner a lot of, not legitimate business, as in we're not illegitimate, but you're going to find that there's a lot of scale-ups or incumbent institutions that start looking at what we're doing. And I can tell you they already are. I'm already having these conversations with entrepreneurs, founders, or projects that are coming from much larger businesses that I would have expected at this stage. And so it's going to mean everything's going to become pretty competitive, even more competitive than it is soon. And so with that in mind, I mean, that's what the sort of the core heart of this challenge is all about, is how do we help to level everybody up? And I mean, what sort of ideas, what ideas need and problems need to be solved with the ways in which entrepreneurship is currently kind of delivered? Where can we adapt what's been done before and improve upon it? Do we need to do that as a starting point? Like, that's a question that's worth asking. Are the tools that are available right now fit for purpose and not just good enough, but are doing the job? I don't know. I mean, Kriss, you must have some thoughts and feelings. You have a roadmap within Entrepreneurial, I'm sure. Where do you sort of see this kind of next gen of of entrepreneurship tools kind of going? What's your sort of gut instinct? Do you think
online, first of all, and then I think there's a huge gap in the market when it comes to both investment and the ecosystems for startups and so because what I experience, at least mainly in Norway and in Denmark, is that you have a lot of investors. That it's not a problem to find money for your company or your startup because there's a lot of money in the world right now. But as soon as it comes to more nerdy, more technical startups and businesses, that there's a challenge, because a lot of the investors, they want something they can easily understand, and they want to understand it just like that, and then they can say, okay, we'll put money into this. Otherwise, they really need to be familiar with the industry or the technology or something like that to be able to invest in it. And that's actually one of the things that we would really like to do with what we work with, is to make business development and business strategy thinking available for all sorts of entrepreneurs, not only the fast and the furious ones, but also the more nerdy. And I don't think I provoke anyone by saying that I think the projects in Catalyst, we can find some of the more nerdy entrepreneurial projects in the world there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a bit of a disconnect between how the really technical but viable businesses are able to, and startups, particularly early stage startups and founders, there's a disconnect between their products and projects and their passion, enthusiasm, and then the buy-in from those that hold the purse strings. I mean, partly that's what Catalyst is an antidote to. We solve part of that problem by being able to provide funding and resources that are sorely and dearly needed to get projects to demonstrate their proof of purpose, right? But yeah, I think that there's something around, you know, what sort of information would be the, you know, part of the solution to that problem? Is it a question that there's not enough data for people to make decisions on? Is there, you know, and what sort of data is worthwhile to help an investor make decisions on? I mean, revenues, users, fine, okay, but what about less tangible things, like, I don't know, getting to the end of your sprint and milestones without people leaving the team, or you know, bringing on board new skills, new capabilities? What do you think?
Do you ask me or everyone?
I'm asking you first, and then I'm opening it up to everybody else.
But definitely, and that's also one of the things that we're really trying to be more clever about, and we don't know how to analyze all the data we got yet. We're working on that, but that's also quite challenging. So we're bringing some quite sharp brains on board. But we really want to know more about what drives entrepreneurs, and we can see some quite interesting patterns when it comes to what drives different kinds of entrepreneurs, what motivates different kinds of entrepreneurs, and actually also there's something between the relation between motivation, what motivates you for being an entrepreneur within a certain industry, and then your ability to actually to put up a project plan and milestones and so on, yeah, and it's just interesting that we can begin to see very early in the process that, okay, this team they need this guy or girl to help them with that and that. Otherwise, they're screwed. But when it comes to some of the projects here, I hope that we'll see some that are so not mature that the teams are not completed, and maybe you have only the core initiators, and of course they'll miss some skills, and that's one of the things that we really search for, identifying as early as possible. Yeah.
Awesome. Did anybody else have any sort of thoughts? Phil, you've got your hand up. So I'm trying to think about, you know, what are the sort, and this is to sort of seed some ideas for proposals to this challenge, right? What are the sort of things that we consider to be important, you know, concepts to communicate, particularly in the context of such a nerdy and technically challenging sector such as blockchains and distributed ledgers, decentralized IDs, and all this fun stuff, smart contracts. Phil, you've got your hand up, so
yeah, directly relating to that, I would like to, someone mentioned, I think Nori said internet 1.0, and now we're 2.0, 3.0, I don't know what we are anymore. I would just like to say that I would say that most people that use the internet today have no idea how the internet works, right? That's fair to say. Not insulting anyone, I have no idea. Above DNSs, that's where I come from, right? So the internet and most of the technology that we use today, let's be honest, I don't know how a graphics card works in the computer or something like that. So there is a level of trust that comes from just seeing the thing work, right? Feeling it in practice and seeing the benefits, right? So do we need to wait for that trust to just establish to a wider range? Because I seriously doubt that we will be able, and that it's even necessary, to go into cryptographic details and Ouroboros, you know, papers with every single person, because it's just not realistic, right? And, you know, how do we find a way to make something? Because the conversation, at least for me now with my friends and with people that I talk to that are not into blockchain, it just gets back to it. How do I know it's not a scam, right? How do I know where is that money? Do I have it? What the hell is a private key? Someone can crack it if you give him enough time, right? So do we just need to wait for like 10 years or something that people just say, okay, it hasn't been cracked yet, so I guess it won't be.
There's a really, you just reminded me of a really poignant moment. A few years ago, a colleague that Kriss and I both know, because we've known each other for a little while, when I mentioned that I had a real big interest in blockchain, he went, or Bitcoin, he went, the Ponzi scheme. And this is a guy that's like, you know, a very seasoned entrepreneur, founded a number of businesses, exited a number of businesses. And it's interesting, like, it's the battle that we have as a sector is changing perceptions, and winning hearts and minds that there are real value, that there's real value being created, right? It's not just magic internet money. There are businesses, there are industries, there are skills that are and real solutions that are being developed in response to really big problems. Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and I echo the thoughts of the chat here. None of us need to know that, you know, our smartphone does what it does. None of us, very few people know that it's got more computational power in it than what they put the man on the moon on, in the computers that we mechanisms that allow that to happen. But, you know, and yet everybody's adopted it. So we'll find that there's a tipping point, everybody knows this, where it's just invisible and you don't need to know about the blockchain. But in order to get there, we need to get the people that have the resources to be able to to be able to feel comfortable with investing in ideas. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask people here, I want to crowdsource an opinion or some understanding. How many of you guys have been through some sort of traditional incubator or accelerator or even business course within university? Just a show of hands. Yeah. And what were the problems with going through those processes that you found that and haven't necessarily found the solution to yet? Anybody's feel free to just chip in. You're all being so polite.
Hey,
In-
what's up, guys?
Hey,
Go ahead,
Tyler.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I mentor at Pi PDX. It's an accelerator, and I went through it previously with it was a mobile application that I was working on that allows you to make geo requests for videos in certain locations. Anyway, and I guess the biggest problem that I have come across is that everyone has a great idea, and they want to start building it, and they want to start investing resources into building it. And the quicker you can, I guess, validate product market fit, the better off you're going to be. You want to like not spend a ton of time building something that no one is going to use, or not have the ability to kind of sell someone using that product, but whatever it is that you're building. So whatever you can do to kind of validate that what you want to build, you have an audience that actually wants to use that product. And if you can do that without investing huge development resources, you're going to be in a much better place. And that's the biggest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd agree. Then too many people, build stuff. Was it this? The quote is, too many businesses build products that nobody wants to buy, right? And that speaks to that sentiment. They haven't done their groundwork. Does anybody else have a view, like in terms of programs that you've been through, or anything, that speaks to how we're going to look to solve this challenge? Or any other insights about this challenge for that matter? There's a bunch of cool insights that were in there.
I just want to interject shortly. Sorry, Chris. Like you said earlier, like there are so many businesses being, built and all of that. So why is it then so hard for us to explain that, right? Because if we have a business, if we see a business that's working, like I can give an example of an NFTs are recently, like art NFTs, simple art NFTs. You, as an artist, you get ripped off by the gallery. They take 85-90% of the funds that you get for your drawing, for whatever you do. And we can do the same thing in NFTs, and you get maybe 10% or 15% ripped off, right? How do you do it? You take a JPEG, you put it on the chain, end of story, right? Is it a copy? Yes, it is. You're fine with it, right? That's a business that you can explain. You pay with ADA, with your wallet. Here is the website. This is how it works, right? So why is it so difficult for us? Not for us in Cardano, for us in crypto in general. Why is it so difficult for us to find 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 examples like that to explain? But it's easy for us to say in generalities, oh, there are so many businesses. Everything is booming everywhere, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas on that. I think there's two parts to that, or to unpack it a bit further. I think timing the markets is super important in terms of when you bring a business and a product to market. Just in the last 24 months, right? How many people have now come on to, the idea of actually cryptocurrencies aren't the scam that everybody would lead you to believe. It's not just for selling and human trafficking and buying illicit narcotics, right? Like people's understanding and knowledge has come on. The other thing is like I think Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm is a really good sort of point to highlight here. There's a really good book, Crossing the Chasm, and it's all about, you know, the difficulty of going from that early stage of innovation to then getting mainstream adoption. And you have these different different slices of the population, right? You've got your techie visionaries, and then you've got your early adopters, then you've got your early majority, late majority, and laggards. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, the early majority, or the main majority, the whole of the majority, is only going to buy a product and trust a product once the techies and the early adopters have kicked the tires around it. It's kind of built to a point where, you know, the early adopters are believing the techies and the visionaries that built the very first genesis of these products and services. The early adopters have had a chance to sort of, you know, get them to be fit for their needs. The techie visionaries have optimized them to really sort of address product market fit and problem solution fit. And only at that point does the herd go, oh, I'm going to trust my mate over there who knows a lot about this stuff. And I've heard a lot of other people talking about it, some of which I kind of trust. You know, it's a timing thing entirely in my eyes around technology innovation. It's the technology adoption curve. That's the actual the chart that I'm thinking of. But, you know, I guess the other way to look at it like this is, how many times have you tried to pitch your business to someone and they just don't get it? They look at you blank faced. They're confused either by what you're saying, or they're just like dismissive. Nah, I'm not really interested. That's not for me. Right. That's because they're not the early adopter. They're waiting for confirmation from other people that are early adopters. And, you know, the majority want to buy from people they trust and things they trust, institutions they trust. So I just think that, yeah, we're in a really interesting, still early stage. And, you know, yeah, Crossing the Chasm is such a great book. And we're going to be, we're legitimizing every single month, you know?
Yeah, I think also, to continue on that, I think one of the issues are, we have Bitcoin, which was purely interest in money or store of wealth. And then we had Ethereum and it came out with smart contracts. And so the subject of smart contracts became very sexy. And then you had an explosion of altcoins, an explosion. And so from the market, they now see such a wide range of different chains saying this and that. And the two things that have focused interest is DeFi. Now everybody's in DeFi, or let's say yesterday, everybody's focused on DeFi. And today it's NFTs. So I think that finally there is some focus or concentration for people to understand use cases. And let's say the average people, but there's still all of that noise of 500 different blockchains, and this one's good and that one's great and this one's no good. But at least for use cases, to go back to Philip, what you're saying, I think that the market has kind of like focused itself on DeFi and is about to focus itself on NFTs. And that will help adoption. Now, Cardano's issue is to get into the game. It's kind of not into the game yet. And I suspect where it might get a better entry point is with NFTs, because there's a lot of DeFi out there right now. And unless the Ethereum world finds that moving over to Cardano is more effective for them, NFTs, I think that Cardano will have an easy entry point there, easier.
Interesting. I'm keen to pick up a point in the chat. Jarvis, you mentioned about you're hearing buzzword bingo going on and around from Silicon Valley to DC. Is there anything else you want to say on that? Do you want to come up to the mic and share some insight, perspective?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, not like I'm super deep in all of it, but I've straddled the line between the Valley and some of the government stuff. And I mean, you guys probably, I'm telling you stuff that you already know, right? Like whatever the hot topic is, you know, at the moment, right? Like there was a time where we could sell any product, any non-product, we could vaporware into a $15 million contract because we said microkernels enough times, right? I mean, like, so that's overdoing it. And I mean, and maybe that's the dark side of, I don't remember the man's name who was talking earlier about, you know, it feels like we're in Internet 1.0 again. And I think that's the kind of negative dark side of that is, and it hurts us in this, you know, you guys are saying, yeah, you try to talk to somebody and then they tell you, oh, you know, the Ponzi scheme or something like that. Well, yeah. And so maybe to the point of that, I mean, we're in the entrepreneurship channel here, but, you know, maybe there's a big overlap with making it easier for devs and even less technical people to make proof of concepts. You know what I mean? Because then there's your proof in the pudding. You have you know, some 60% of the way thing that gets the idea across, right? That kind of shows like, hey, here's what I'm talking about. Look, and I actually did. So Kriss, I don't know if that's really what you're asking for, but I actually had a big question that's been bothering me. And I'm fairly new, and I went through the Plutus Pioneers, the one that's just finishing up. And I'm actually pitching I'm doing a first round pitch to investors tomorrow for a company I'd like to do, and based on top of you know, basically roughly on top of Cardano and Plutus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a developer and I'm an entrepreneur, and one of the main things for me is so security is paramount. Actually, that's how I arrived at Cardano, because I looked at Tezos, and then I looked at the like formal verification methods. I'm in the wrong channel for that. You know, Tim was talking about eyes glazing over. I've got you beat. Start talking about formal verification and everybody's instantly asleep, and rightly so. And me too, because I'm not an expert there, but that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm trying to build stuff on top of here. But I think it's germane to this channel and this conversation. You know, we're looking for ways to, you know, to differentiate. And I think the academics know it, right? Like we've got Haskell, I mean, I remember the Hackums project where they did a Haskell DSL on military stuff, and they put like a real dedicated red team that couldn't shut them down. And they gave them access to all these parts, and they couldn't shut down. Like they were doing some pretty hairy stuff with drones, and the attack guys, the red team, couldn't stop them. And that was years ago. That was like 2015. So it's super sexy that, hey, you know, like my money could be on mathematically verifiable stuff. You know, like you don't have to, pardon my language, like you don't have to necessarily like go shit on Ethereum or something, right? Like there's the strong eco argument, I think, you know, compared to Bitcoin, right? So that makes Cardano look sexier, right? Proof of stake, right? So that's something that I think every man can understand. So I think my question is, well, what about the security stuff, right? Because every man Jones out in the world, or every person, right? Like nobody cares about gender. Every person Jones out in the world, at this point, we kind of do have a general sense of, hey, wait a minute, is my stuff secure?
Yeah.
Isn't that something to harp on?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got this theory, and I've been, you know, I'm not so counterculture that, you know, you would definitely unfollow me, but I am, you know, I'm skeptical of enough things to sort of consider, like, what does a future look like soon enough where a general narrative changes, where everybody is more concerned about trust or trustless systems. And this is what distributed systems and decentralization is all about. We're the early adopters, we're the techies, we're the visionaries. Actually, we're not the early adopters, we're the techies and the visionaries. The early adopters are still just yet to get here yet. But at a point where all of a sudden, maybe the narrative around truth, and I'm not talking about fake news and thinking about, I mean, that's a part of it. I think once the narrative changes and it becomes more of a something that's brought into focus that's more relevant to the person, that's when these unsexy areas of sort of cybersec and cryptography start getting into sort of the mainstream consciousness as something to be slightly more aware of, even if it's not to understand it, to kind of be aware that actually you don't necessarily need, there's trustless systems, you know, people don't need to know what a zero knowledge proof is. They just need to know that there's no way that the code can be wrong because the proof says it's right.
I don't think we'd have to like dive into the mathematics of it, right, to be able to make a strong, like, I mean, like, go the way of Apple, right? Like, hey everybody, we're going to pretend like your privacy matters to us, right? I mean, and boom, right? Like, you buy an iPhone, right? I mean, like, I think there's a, you know, there's a 0 to 1 there. I think there's a, you know, you're talking about crossing the chasm. I'll throw out the Peter Thiel, right? Like, I think there's a 0 to 1 there. Like, just assume everything's safe, and if it's free, I'm the product, and well, that's okay because I don't have anything to hide, is 0 to, hey, maybe you want your cryptocurrency to be secure. That would be our 1. That's our infinite jump, and could put us in. I think we have to be able to make that accessible. I think people are becoming more and more sophisticated and have higher expectations there in general. And definitely there are niche crowds of informed people who would be very keen on investing and interacting with us because we're kind of trumpeting those sorts of concerns and facts.
Yeah, and I think that's
Jarvis, in your pitch tomorrow, I wonder, on that point of security, I wonder if your audience will talk about that $600 million DeFi hack that just happened last week. I think that's been in the news.
I mean, I agree, right? Like, these are going to be more and more. I mean, you're 100% agree, right? It's going to be more and more in the public eye and more relevant to just everyday, normal, non-technical people.
I find it mind-boggling that a $600 million scam or hack and loss is just another day in crypto. Like,
I know, right?
Like it's a normal thing to happen, and this is okay.
Yeah, so
that really
Chris,
bothers me.
Is there, you know, talking about for F7, right? Like, maybe that's a particular way to go. We could partner with North Korea, and we could just, you know, look into borrowing from other, you know, blockchains and infusing those monies into our system, right? Like, I think that's pretty legit. It's provable that it works.
Yeah. And just to sort of pick up on Tommy's point, yes, the guy did return it. He's an ethical hacker for sure. Doesn't want his identity to be revealed, possibly because he works for input output. Who knows? We don't know. But the kind of point is like, it's a commonplace thing, right? And maybe that's part of the reason why there is a little bit of reluctance to invest in the space, because investors are a little bit conscious that their money might, you know, be being pulled out by hackers, and there's no secure system.
First, the reputation was this is for drug money.
Yeah.
Second was rug pulls, and now hacks. So you've got 3 strikes against the system in that sense. So Jarvis, yeah, your point about Cardano, maybe in their marketing or public awareness, really should focus more on security.
And yeah, I mean, because that's why I'm here, and I'm highly unusual. However, I think there's a story there. I think there's a really like meta level selling point for, you know, to bring in other entrepreneurs. Like, hey, you want to build something, why would you choose this blockchain? Here are the reasons. And we don't have to, you can go down the technical rabbit hole with people who are into that and need that and appreciate that, right? But for the person who's, you know, choosing between the iPhone and the you know, whatever competitor, right? Like, just to say, hey, we're the ones who actually care about this stuff, because I haven't seen that trumpeted out in the wild. So why don't we lead that charge?
It's coming. There's a tidal wave of projects that are going to be on the market really soon, right? Tyler, you've got your hand up. You've got probably another point to make, have you? You might be on mute.
Muted.
Yeah, so I've had the conversation where I've like introduced blockchain and maybe Cardano to a friend and just like the whole cryptocurrency, and then I've gotten to kind of like buy into it and be like, oh yeah, this is really cool. I like this idea of self-sovereignty. This is awesome. And that's after you get through like it's not a pyramid scheme, all of that. You get through all those rebuttals. And then the other side of that, you get past all those initial rebuttals and it's like, wait a second, I don't really want self-sovereignty. What if I lose my keys? Do I lose all my funds? I don't want that type of responsibility. And I think that's going to be a really hard problem to solve or to get to that kind of like early or late majority. Because like if you lose your password with Gmail, you can get back on. There's a way for you to get back on. If you lose your log into your bank account, the bank's going to help you out as long as you have an ID. So maybe that's where the digital ID comes in to give you, but still, I guess there needs to be some sort of solution where if I screw up with managing my keys and I lose them all, how do I get my blockchain wealth back or my wealth that I hold? And I mean, without solving that sort of problem, I think in my mind, it's going to be hard for wide stream adoption.
Yeah, and to the point Jarvis is making in the chat, I think this is where the decentralized ID comes in, right? Like this is where it starts making a bit more of a joined up end-to-end approach. Once, yeah, you just, I mean, we're already using biometrics and, bioverification in your phones, have done for years now. It's only a matter of time before that's what the DID is, I would think. Steve, you've got your hand up. Good to see you here, sir.
Oh, it's great to be here. Great to see you, Chris. Danny, wonderful job today. Spectacular, sir. So I just wanted to jump in, because Tyler, what you were saying about people being really concerned about losing their keys or whatever, my business, I deal with mostly homeowners in computer repairs. And I spend probably 25 to 30% of my time recovering passwords for clients, resetting passwords for clients, helping them find a way to remember their frickin' passwords. So now, granted, the lion's share, I'm in a retirement area. I'm right on the beach, and a lot of my folks are, let's just say that the 60s, where I'm at, the 60s is a pleasant memory for them if they can remember. So, I mean, granted, I have an older crowd, but nonetheless, these are the people with the bags and bags and bags of cash that need somewhere to go and get safe haven. And man, I would love to find a way to get them into crypto. But since I spend so much time helping them find their frickin' password, it's hard for me to think about it.
There's a Steve ETF there.
Right?
I'll manage it.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you, the whole custodial thing spooks me out. I mean, I've got clients that will call me and say, Steve, I need you to come and help me get into my brokerage account. And, it's like, I don't want to see this stuff. I do not want to I don't want to have the sheriff knock on my frickin' door because you got ripped off by somebody. And the only thing you can remember, because you're on the spectrum, the only thing you can remember is that Steve helped you with your passwords. I just don't want to be in that position. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I've had friends like, oh yeah, just here, I'll give you some cash, buy the Cardano for me. I'm like, no, I don't really want to do that because like if I screw up, then you're gonna hold me responsible, and I don't want to be responsible.
So I'm keen to also understand, is there anybody here that's even thinking about a proposal for this DLT Entrepreneurship Toolbox Challenge?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. Yeah, I'm keen to review and read them once they're drafted. And just for anybody that's new here, and I don't think there's many people that are new here. Everybody knows that you just need to get a draft in within the next 7 days, right? You could essentially have like a 2-liner, kind of like I say that really reductively, like you should do a job on it, but you just need to get a draft in, and then it's in, and then you've got another 2 weeks to refine. So we had a hand up just for a second then. Oh yeah. Hey there, Robert. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm awake today. Yeah. Which always helps. Yeah. I won't say that later on at the end of the day, but yeah, we'll be probably, I'm sort of tossing up between the local community hub and the DLT toolbox, or one of the proposals, or possibly splitting it up. It's one that was already in Fund 4, but we'll refine it a bit more to go through for Fund 6. But that's based off the work that we've been doing for the last 7 years in social entrepreneurship, which is basically bringing a whole lot of people up, teaching them to how to be entrepreneurs, bringing in things like the lean startup sort of methodology, if you like, but applying that to social systems, looking at all of Osterwild's business model canvas, those sort of tools, and how to understand the ontology of businesses, doing customer development, all that sort of stuff that we've been doing for the last 7 years and trying to bring people on. And then the idea really is to take that, but now start to bring in a lot of the sort of things around how do we do things in this new space? How do we do self-governance? You know, for example, what are the tools that would look like for doing that? You know, because what are the different routes for funding? So doing Catalyst, those sort of things, rather than, I was having a conversation the other day around this particular one, is where we've built up all these social entrepreneurs, you know, taking them on the learning engine is what we refer to it as. We've taken them on this journey. Then effectively what happens is, because they're trying to do social entrepreneurship, they're trying to do public good sort of stuff, right? They're saying, walk out on that plank, and we'll push you off, right? Don't expect anyone to catch you, because the private sector won't fund you, because you're not doing a commercial profit, you're not getting a commercial return. But equally, the charitable sector won't fund you because you're entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So you don't fit the charitable bucket either. So you're going to fall right down into that valley there. You're going to be bruised quite hard, but there's no support. All right. So one of the sort of hopes, if you like, for what Catalyst itself presents, there's an opportunity for us to redefine what it means to finance public goods through the private sector, and to bring those sort of ideas forward, rather than just purely private sector sort of stuff, or purely charitable or public good stuff. Can we find that sort of middle ground and use the tools that we've got available to us to do that? So that's sort of around sort of the ideas and stuff that I'd like to sort of see develop further. There's thinking with respect to that sort of stuff around, like the platform design toolkit that Simon and others have been working on, which is a really good starting point. And they've also been working on things like the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem organization, which is just another name for DAO, but anchored in sort of the real world. So, in terms of, doesn't talk anything about blockchains or anything else like that. But that's coming from one of the exemplars there is this company, Chinese company called Haier, which manufactures fridges. But they're structured as basically a whole lot of little micro enterprises. They actually use recently they've started using, what's the Linux Foundation chain? It's gone, to coordinate all the pairwise contracts between all these micro enterprises. And they have an open innovation policy, which is to reach out and ensure that even parties outside the organization contribute to the research and the development of their technology, but can also be compensated accordingly for it.
Mm.
So these sort of ideas I would love to see being brought in to the space and developed a lot further. And so in a sense, with the proposal and stuff, you know, I've got to try and figure out how to word it, obviously, and make that a whole bunch of different concepts accessible, which is a bit different, hard to do.
Yeah, isn't it? Well, good luck. And I want to pick up on a couple of your points there. So, and I'm going to ask Kriss to give some insights as well here around like the kind of motivations of the entrepreneur and like some of the interesting stuff that from the research that the Entrepreneurial's done into different motivations and what drives people and, you know, which sort of category you sit into. And the reason why I want Kriss to sort of touch on that is because I think there's a shift that's beginning to occur culturally as well, outside of blockchain, outside of the typical sort of innovation ecosystems at big, massive investment fund level, like at Jupiter level, right? Where you've got investors into those funds, those traditional funds, that are now seeking out investment products that are about, you know, social impact or mission-driven businesses, or, you know, to the point of sort of sustainable development goals or whatnot. One of the biggest challenges I think that we've seen though is that it's quite difficult to quantify impact, right? Outside of money, outside of users. There's been, you know, emerging work that's been done around entrepreneurship, around sort of creating what are the right sorts of objectives or metrics to be able to do social impact or sustainable development, sustainable impact. I think that's a really interesting space within the context of what we're trying to achieve with this challenge, particularly because, you know, as you said, Rob, you're looking at other sort of paradigms that aren't just about, you know, how much money can you bring in, but, you know, how much value can you create. So I would encourage, you know, proposers to think about, you know, the breadth of types of entrepreneurs and how they're motivated and what their sort of end outcomes are intending to achieve. Kriss, do you want to say anything about Get, Give, Make, Live or anything like that? You're on mute, mate.
Damn. One of the analytic frameworks that we've done is called Get, Give, Make, Live, which are the 4 motivational categories that we see entrepreneurs primarily are driven by. And Get is the entrepreneurs that want to be rich and famous. They want to build a business and have success with that. You have the live entrepreneurs, who are the ones that they just want to live from what they like to do, their interest, their passion, their talent, or something like that. They don't really care how much they earn. They just want to be able to make a living of it. We see a lot of artists in that category, of course. And then you have the make entrepreneurs, which are the ones that are highly motivated by creating a product or developing something. That can both go for IT developers, but also the ones that like to do things with their hands or develop concepts and stuff like that. And then when we look at those categories, we've seen a quite interesting development throughout the last couple of years. That is that we've seen that, for example, tech entrepreneurs, they used to be very much in the category of make, because they want to develop products and do some coding and stuff like that. And we've seen that a lot of them have moved over to the 4th category, which is give, which is give something back to society or make the world a better place or something like that, which we find very interesting, because that actually shows us that there's a movement among entrepreneurs that they're going from being motivated primarily by one thing, but actually moving over to, okay, we can change the world by doing entrepreneurship. So it's not just fluffy words when incubators and accelerators say they want to have entrepreneurs to change the world and make it a better place and save the climate and so on. We can actually see that a lot of entrepreneurs is taking this task on their backs as well. Yeah,
that's amazing, Chris. Yeah, I think just really interesting. So get, give, make, live. You sit as an entrepreneur in one or more of those categories. Rob, you've got your hand up again, so feel free.
Well, you gave me a nice segue in terms of the SDGs and stuff like that, so I can't not say something about that. So there's a few insights that have been put up across different categories to actually try and bring different types of metrics to measure social impact or environmental impact in some way. There was, and indeed across Fund 4, I think there was a challenge, or Fund 5, to do sustainability development goals in 2030. This is something I think which is incredibly important. I think there's also going to be a huge amount of demand for this, because as you pointed out, large institutional investors, the BlackRocks in particular, have said, hey, we've got to invest in environmental change. In the sense, it shouldn't be environmental change, it's actually change in the way humans coordinate themselves so we don't shit on the planet. Basically is what we're talking about here. In other words, it's an economic problem. It's not an environmental problem. We've got to change the way in which we work together. So when you've got finally BlackRock or Vanguard, two of the largest pension funds, investors in the world, saying that actually we've got to do this. But the problem is, having worked in impact finance, is no one really knows how to do it. It's really just sort of like put your finger up in the air, which way is the wind blowing type of situation. Or some companies, oddly, like Nestle, for example, has been doing a huge amount in terms of trying to do proper impact and environmental reporting around things like for their CSR, so corporate social responsibility. But like most things in the world, a lot of the climate and responsibility reporting is one, we'll do this because we have to. The market's kind of demanding it, but it's more greenwashing than anything else. So again, the opportunities that exist for us to build veracity into the reporting is immense in terms of traceability. Even just, I was just in the digital identity breakout room before, and a lot of people frame sort of digital identity as for individuals, but actually it's also digital identity for things, for documents, for bits of information, all sorts of stuff. So the same technology can be applied for things like doing Nestle's corporate social responsibility reporting as it did, right? And from that, you can see all the interactions of things that they've done over a period of time, right? And so that's at the macro level. There's big demand coming down the chain in terms of invested dollars. It's sometimes referred to as blended returns, whereby they're not looking for profit maximization in the sense of 8, 10, 20% return. They're compensating financial returns for the social or environmental returns. But at the moment, they have absolutely no way to report that. Okay. Yeah. And one of the reasons that has made me actually particularly excited about the Cardano code base in particular is that we now actually have what I refer to as a multi-capital accounting bookkeeping system. Because inside of the multi-asset support, you've got the ability to basically record different types of assets. So value is defined not as a single unit, but as a scalar. Oh, sorry, not as a scalar, but as a vector, which basically means you can do multi-dimensional multi-capital accounting, right? And so value is defined as a bundle of tokens, a vector space or something. So you've actually got the core infrastructure to do multi-capital accounting. And I'd just absolutely love to see that sort of stuff being developed far more and worked on in different ways. And one of the ways in which we can do that is to push through the idea of doing different forms of SDG kind of reporting in our proposals in Catalyst to begin with, because it still is quite a bit to get your head around all of this sort of stuff.
I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of us thinking about, the auditability and it being, around these sorts of measures or focuses that, significant parts of the world believe in, SDGs, leveling up equality, education, all this kind of stuff. And this, as I said in the chat, it's the beauty of the blockchain. That's what it does. It creates the immutable ledger that's secure and trustworthy. That, I think with Cardano, the reason why I'm working here is because I have confidence in the security layer, right? I have total confidence that, and feel like it's only a matter of time before this idea of, rug pulls or hacks are kind of disappeared. And actually it's about, systems and processes that people can trust to rebuild critical infrastructure with and be able to report the sorts of outcomes that, you sort of suggested, Rob. Len, I'm gonna invite you to make comment, and then I am gonna think about closing down this room for the reason that if you haven't seen in the chat, we've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow, and also we've been going for quite some time. It's been a thrilling conversation. Len, please.
I want to follow up on your said the reason you're with Cardano is because you're confident about the security.
Not the only reason. Like,
no, that's okay. That's okay. What gives you the confidence? Let me be a customer that that Jarvis is trying to pitch. What gives you the confidence about security? Is it Charles's AMAs or his whiteboard? What gives you the confidence?
I mean, for me, listen, I've made no bones about it. I nerd out on the research papers. Like I do read them, and so the more and more that I've read them, the more and more I became comfortable with it. I know that's not the easy thing, just to kind of then go and say to an investor, this is why you should invest in my Cardano built project. It doesn't fly, but yeah, just the understanding of that this is backed by academic peer-reviewed science, right? To me, that was the leading indicator back in the end of 2016, 2017, right? That there was a team of individuals that were being built around first principles, bottom-up, peer-reviewed academic approach, and as that's grown in capacity, capability, and scope, I've just become more and more comfortable. That's my sort of genesis story, really.
Maybe you could give Jarvis some links to the key things that convinced you about security, figuring that that's one of the things he's going to pitch is security.
I mean, yeah, Jarvis, it sounds like you're in a security oriented domain. I wonder whether that would be more of a help or a hindrance.
No, you're both right. I am familiar with the white papers, and I went similarly down that road as well. Doesn't mean I don't need help there, for sure. I have a degree in philosophy with a minor in chemistry, right? So, yeah. So that tells you everything you need to know. But I work as my most recent title has been senior software engineer, working for, people who do things. Yeah. So working, in the area I work in. So there's some niche experience and some understanding of those things. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the white papers are same for me, like 100%. Like that was the hook in my mouth that made me pay closer attention and get drawn in.
right? I don't know if anybody ever saw them, but does anybody remember the whiteboard presentations by the research team around random number generation for casinos? Does anybody remember those? So there was a period of time in my life where pretty much the only things I watched on YouTube was output of and there wasn't even header sort of slides or anything like that, like output from input output. And there was just, if you go back through the earliest of YouTube videos on the input output channel, there's some really cool nerdy videos there talking about, yeah, the problem with online casinos.
To like
Every time Felix joins the room,
it's like our big brother.
Yeah, this is not possible. I'm a professional disruptor. Okay. Except that it's a new rolling catalyst. Fuck you all. Okay, see you later. Ciao.
Professional disturber.
And probably in the last workshop, there was more people, and more people actively asked questions during the session, and it's a bit different probably from the first part of this workshop. And I don't know if it makes sense like to have two plans based on the feedback that you get live from people. I don't know if it makes sense to adapt a bit the presentation, but just a random